All right, that was the end of the film here, and if you'll give me just a second, I'm fixing to go and get Eddie Lebron to join us on our show here. Um, I can only do so much with two screens. Oh well. Anywho, let me go ahead and call him up here.
Hello.
Hello, Eddie.
Hey, how are ya?
I'm doing great. Welcome to the Sonic Car TV show. We're currently we just finished watching the film, and I gotta say, in my personal opinion, I really liked it. I really liked a whole bunch of the live action scenes, and that must have been a grand task just to go out and film.
Oh, definitely. I'm glad you liked it.
So
Uh,
go ahead.
oh no, yes, I'm still trying to, I mean, I'm still trying to absorb the fact that the movie is finally done. Like, it seems so foreign to me since I've been doing this for so long, so,
I'm sure. I mean, 2.5 years. Wow.
yeah.
I remember when the project first began. It's like I know at the time that you first started, there was actually two fan film projects. It was yours, and there was another one. But the other one eventually dropped out, and it was down to just you. So everyone had their eyes on you and your team
Yeah.
and everything else that was going on. Um, what locations did you have to go to film all this?
We shot most of it within like a 50-mile radius of where I live. I live about an hour north of Manhattan, and a lot of the scenery was essentially shot in Bear Mountain, this very nice scenic place up where I live. Uh, City stuff was shot in Manhattan, and it was just essentially around in the area, and a lot of the stuff was digitally altered to look a little more grand since the initial plan was we wanted to shoot outside the country, but once Julio came into the picture, we kind of had to pick and choose exactly what we wanted to do wise, much more wisely. And with the inclusion of the set that we did for Robotnik and everything, we kind of made some decisions, decided to shoot up where I live.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Um, I think some people, there's been all sorts of mixed reactions to the movie. I mean, some people really like it. Some people were complaining about the effects. Um, and I know there's been some drama that's been starting up on Twitter over people. We got people fighting on this now. It's like people are like, well, I really like it, and you're like, well, why did you pay for this? And it's like I'm having to explain. This is really good for it's an independent studio. This is not a Hollywood film here. So I still think it was pretty good, all things considered. We do got quite a few questions that were generated out from this, and I think one of the biggest questions we need to get out of the way: the fingers on Knuckles at the end there. What's up with that? Because Knuckles doesn't originally have fingers. It was like a mitt glove.
Yeah. The interesting thing is I was more involved in everything else in the movie aside from Knuckles. The inclusion of Knuckles was decided very late in the process, and my involvement in creating the model was a little less involved than with everything else. Uh, I agreed with the reasoning for the sake of the shot that uh, realistically, for the sake of the realism and Knuckles' involvement in the world, he would have fingers. But I kind of feel that the model at the end was more of a test bed because I'd probably be a lot more safe if I was to do this as a show. Um, Seeing Knuckles at the end and seeing the fingers for that brief moment is going to cause much less of an impact than say if Knuckles was one of the primary characters in the movie and he had the fingers play out. And also another thing is with Sonic, from beginning to end, this whole process, I had feedback from the fans. uh, there's a pretty big likelihood if the feedback for the fingers was negative upon revealing Knuckles' character, I probably would have taken that into consideration. Because Knuckles, I think, out of every element of the movie, since he was kept a secret, was the only aspect of the movie I had no fan feedback on. It was between me and my producer, David. So, I mean, in future iterations, while I understand the need for the fingers, I might just go back to the mittens since it seems a little bit safer. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's already talk about fans. They actually, some of them are actually asking like, is there any ideas about maybe a sequel, or some people are actually comparing this particular video to like a TV pilot. And I could see where they could get that from, because especially with the way it ended there, it looked like it could carry on into like a series. But that's I taking 2.5 years just to film 20 minutes of that had to take a long time. So I don't know what your thoughts is on that.
The shooting was the easy part. Collectively, it was only 6 days of shooting. I mean, the hardest day to shoot was the egg carrier stuff, the stuff inside Robotnik's ship. Everything else was a lot easier than I thought it would be. It became a weird throw off the balance, which was I thought the shooting would be the hard part and the CG would be easier. And it turned out that the shooting was the easy part and CG was the hard part. Shooting wrapped long ago, and we've just been doing inserts since then because we're essentially finding ways to make use of our time in between CG. And I guess as of this past January, I had to learn 3D and learn various other types of visual effects because there was no way this movie was going to get done on the team we had, because a majority of the team is working, pro bono. They're working just for the sake of working on the project and seeing it, to the end. If I had, ILM or Weta Digital behind this, then an episode could be pumped out within 3 to 4 weeks. So, it's the burden of being an independent production. It's just we have so little resources. So if we had more resources, this could have been done within a month, which is what I would want to do with a series. Is I want to handle things a little bit differently. Also, if we were to do a series, it wouldn't be live action. The live action element was just essentially a experimental thing for this that I didn't intend on carrying over.
Right. Well, let me tell you, if y'all ever do decide to do like a series or anything, I would totally get behind you guys on that. And I'm able to get in touch with the community and everything else like that. So, who knows? I find if you find the right people, you got the right resources. So, it's just stuff to be thinking about and mulling on, and who knows? Who knows what the future might carry? I know you got other projects and other plans you want to do too, but
Yes.
that's this is something to keep in mind for the future.
Oh,
So,
totally. Thank you.
uh-huh. So, anyway, I got a few questions from Twitter here.
Awesome.
I already asked the Knuckles one, so I'm going to skip over that one.
Okay.
Let's see. I had some questions here just a moment ago. Actually, let's ask some questions. I got Matt from Sonic Paradox, and he wants to know: did you use HDR for your rendering?
Yeah, we used a combination of HDRs that we shot ourselves on location and HDRs that were pre-made and stock. It depended on the situation. HDRs were only used for the robots. Weirdly enough, the biggest technical hurdle of the movie was Sonic's fur. And I think to the chagrin of a lot of fans, there was actually a brief contemplation of just removing the fur entirely, because what it was doing to the render times and everything else was just nightmarish. The fur is probably the single biggest reason why the movie wasn't released sooner. Why we ran into issues in post-production. The fur was an absolute nightmare, so we didn't use HDR on that, but we did on the robots since they were able to behave much better with it.
And in answer to some people who are asking in the chat room right now, what's HDR? I believe it's high definition rendering. Is that correct?
I mean, I've actually heard that terminology used. From what I know, it's high dynamic range imaging. I mean, various people say it various different ways, but I think the actual way is high dynamic range imaging, which is essentially a an image that has multiple stops of latitude and information, and it essentially the image isn't as you see it. There's more information within it, so you can see into highlights, into darks, and you primarily use that uh, as either a plate in which you would put your characters in, like because an HDR is usually shot in a globe format. You usually either shoot it with a very, very, very wide lens, or you shoot it against a mirror ball. That way, when you bring it into the computer, you can reform it into kind of a dome that you can put your character in the center of, and you can either use it as a an environment unto itself, or more popular use is you can use it to add reflections and use it to light your subject. Since if you're using that image, you're going to be able to replicate the reflections and the lighting of your environment much more accurately. So that's probably why I think the robots most of the time in the film, they have the best renders since we kind of ended up having more accurate renders with them.
Gotcha. Now, I think everyone's been dying to know. I know y'all been having problems, especially since the Saturday introduction of the 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 movie at MAGfest, and I
Yeah,
think we want to go more into detail about what happened at MAGfest and what happened to make the movie so late here.
yeah. It was a situation of bad timing. And it's like a weird domino effect of all boiling back down to the fur. It's earlier render issues with it. Renders were coming back incomplete because of the fur. To the chagrin of more fans, the final shot of Knuckles was going to have fur, but the fur wasn't working, and we wanted the movie out. And I already knew we were kind of pushing it with the fingers, so I took the fur off Knuckles. Um, it was just a bad series of events in terms of corrupted data. I brought the workstation down to MagFest because I wanted some shots re-rendered, and the render farm was going to get them to me with enough time to export it, because exporting the movie takes, in a good situation, maybe an hour and a half. So I'd be able to export it 2 days beforehand, or the night before, and I'd have my cut. Then we got some files back, and they were corrupted, and for some weird reason, which I'm still looking into, the hard drive files just started breaking up. The hard drive stopped working, and that was our primary drive. Our backup, we have two backups, but MagFest is located in Maryland, and we're located up in New York, so our backups were all here. So, down at MagFest, I was unable to export the final version of the movie with the final renders that I wanted. And when we got back here, we essentially spent all of these days rebuilding various shots, rebuilding some of the cut, relinking, having in some cases to reanimate certain shots and re-render and recomposite certain shots. And it was very unfortunate because I went into this wanting a month before. I wanted a month before the release to have a final cut, and because of Sonic's Fur, we had a much smaller gap between completion and the release and the MagFest premiere, and then we ran into the MagFest issues, and then we ran into the issues this past week, and it's unfortunate stuff. That's all that it boils down to. It's a lot of bad timing. It's a lot of learning as we're going along in terms of these effects, and it's been a very rough week. So
Yeah, I can understand. It's like I'm sure, as I understand, you told me earlier that you've only gotten 2 hours rest, and that was during the time that the movie was being exported, uploaded.
that's right.
So, man, so you're just running on fumes right now.
Yes.
So, I There was another question that just popped up here, and I gotta go find it now because I'm trying to scroll through so much. Um, I know that it was originally reported that it was a Trojan that was happening over at MAGfest, but I know that got cleared up real quick, and
Yeah,
it's
that
just
was the initial thought, mainly because some people have to understand. Uh, we went into the MagFest screening with one thought, and then as we continued working throughout the weekend, we figured out exactly what the issue was. Uh, Imagine it's Friday night before the screening, and this happens. Uh, we spent very little time trying to figure out exactly what happened because as soon as something happened, our goal was okay. We need something for tomorrow. We did very little research as to what happened, and it seemed like it was a Trojan. It could have been a combination of many things, but it seemed like it was more of a hard drive file issue, something that doesn't really necessarily stem from a Trojan. But that was our initial thought, mainly because we didn't really have much time to think about what caused it, because we were more concerned about getting something ready for Saturday. So,
yeah. It's like nothing. It's nothing like everything just coming crashing down at the very last moment when you're trying to come up with ideas of what's going on. So
yeah, it's and I mean it's a hard situation mainly because throughout the whole Sonic process, it was like it was like working a job that you were going to work at for the rest of your life because I never saw an end working on the movie. Every day I was doing a shot, and it seemed like the movie was not going to get done, not because I wasn't working on it, just because you just keep going, and you just kind of feel like, wow, this is never going to end. And then you get to the end, and then this happens, so uh, I'm just happy it's done and out. It's just, it's flabbergasting to me that it's actually done.
it's great. And like I said, everyone seems to be polarized on how the movie was. Some people really like it. Some people was like, you know, I've already said this before. And I think one of the big question was why the creative decision to make Sonic so more, I guess, realistic looking in comparison to just using his Sega model.
Yes. Um, I mean, in terms of the polarizing reactions, I definitely foresaw that going into this from the beginning, just because it's that when I did Mega Man, there's always like one path and one series of rules that if you adhere to them, then you know you're essentially doing good by the franchise. You're doing good by Mega Man. With Sonic, there's very few rules because there's so many iterations, and it's all dependent on how old the fan is, what was their background on Sonic, how were they exposed to Sonic, uh, what genre excites them, the comics or the video games. So I went in knowing that this was going to be polarizing. It's the Sonic fan base. It's inevitable. You're going to make some happy, and you're going to make others not. And that's that. Um, at the end of the day, the Sonic design was all just to kind of right now, as the film is, it's already a stretch to integrate him into the live action setting. So without the fur, it would have, and simplifying his design, it would just made it even more startling. Because right now, at this point, with the polarizing, reaction, not necessarily buy it, but you can at some points kind of accept Sonic interacting in these situations and kind of accept him interacting with these people and kind of accept this. But if we were to simplify his design back to the way it was, then there was kind of just at that point we might as well just be doing a full CG movie, which is what I originally wanted to do. The only fortunate thing from this is now that I started working in CG and 3D, I can probably do something like that now. But yeah, it was essentially the situation and the realistic elements of what we were dealing with just kind of dictated where we had to go with Sonic. Um, which is why if we were to do a CG show, I probably would get rid of the fur.
Yeah, you'd probably be better trying to go back to the original Sega model, but that's my personal opinion. I'm sure people have other opinions as well, but
That the fur is also polarizing. Some people think it's a good change. Some people think it's a horrible change. So it gets to a point where when it comes to Sonic fan fiction or anything Sonic fan related, you kind of have to. And I guess it sounds selfish, but I'm pretty sure a lot of the artists do this. You kind of have to follow the beat of your own drum because no matter what you do, you're not going to make everyone happy. So you might as well at least attempt to make yourself happy.
as an artist, I understand completely. So
Mm.
I've been there, done that.
Awesome.
Um, I think as far as the fur was concerned, people knows that Sonic seemed a little on the dark side. His fur color may have been shades too dark. I don't know.
It's in the movie. It's kind of shot dependent. Like when he's more illuminated, the fur really has a nice blue. That was more of just a compositing lighting integration. Like if you watch the very first teaser, his fur is beyond dark. Like it's not even like it's like borderline black instead of blue, which was one of my main concerns with the first teaser. Was just that it was way too dark. In the final film, it's kind of dependent on the situation and dependent on the lighting. And also, one thing that I've learned from various visual effects artists in the industry, people that are working now, is the key to integration is sometimes desaturation. Because some things naturally look saturated, but in the environment of the real world, they're never really as saturated as you think they actually are, if that makes sense. So one of the things that ended up taking a hit was kind of the saturation of Sonic's fur, which in more of the sunlit shots, his fur pops a little bit better. In some of the more overcast shots, we had to go in a darker direction just to, have a more appropriate composite. So then again, it goes back to the whole thing. If this was completely CG, then there's much less rules to adhere to, and I'd be able to kind of respect the design and the color a little bit more.
Yeah. Um, this probably got answered earlier, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it again, especially for people who are just now joining us. What program did you use to do all the CG animation in?
We used Autodesk Maya for all the 3D, and we used After Effects for all the compositing. It was universal throughout all the artists, and we kept the process simple. And yeah, I mean, of course, in most visual effects houses, they always adhere to one program and one means of a workflow. So we tried to adhere to that as well, just so there were no hiccups. And despite that, there still were kind of hiccups going from setup to setup. But yeah, we stuck with Autodesk Maya for all of our CG.
Sweet. Um, okay, I think this is another big question. How did you manage to get Jaleel White to sign on?
It was not as hard as most people think, mainly because since I work in the film industry, mainly on the independent side, um, it's a very straightforward procedure in which you call up the actor's agent, you pitch what you're doing, and if you have a reputation behind you, then it kind of helps you in your case. We pitched what we wanted to do. We pitched our overall goal. We informed Jaleel and his representatives of what we worked on in the past and what we're doing now. And Jaleel was very, very into what we were doing. And being an actor in LA, he kind of sees the potential marketability of something like this. So he liked the overall concept. He liked we wanted to do something different, and it was a nice excuse to go back to doing Sonic. So it just kind of was all the right little pieces, and Jaleel said yes, and we recorded with him. Oh, I'm actually supposed to be doing a radio interview with him next Monday. I think it's gonna be like the first time in like over a year that I'm gonna have to talk to him.
Oh, wow. Well, that's great.
Yes. We actually extended a premiere invite, but he was promoting his sci-fi show, um, which I guess kind of worked out.
You talking about Total Blackouts?
Exactly.
Oh yeah, I saw the first episode and I was like, okay, this is just Fear Factor in the dark, and I was never a big fan of Fear Factor, so I just
Yeah.
like, um, I like you, Jaleel, but I'm just gonna move somewhere else. Oh well.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see. I have another question. Okay. I got another question here. Interesting question. Why the creative decision to put Knuckles at the end of the film?
Um, After a while, it became a little apparent that throughout the movie, we kind of hint at the fact that we label Sonic as the term a South Islander, which means there are more of his kind. We are in a world and an environment in which his kind does exist, and they operate amongst us, not in the city, but they operate amongst us in our world. And I felt at a point that just showing Sonic didn't necessarily sell that he's there are multiple South Islanders as we call them, but technically Knuckles is not such a case, but I digress. Um, Multiple of his kind, these humanoid animals. So we wanted to add someone else in there to not only kind of contribute to where we wanted the story to go, but also, I guess, out of all the characters, I'm more of a Knuckles guy than anybody else. I'm, first and foremost a Sonic guy, and then I'm a Knuckles guy, and not to say I'm not a Tails guy, but it depends on the iteration of Tails. I mean, if you're gonna bookend a movie and try to set up a story, then I feel like I'm not Tails. Knuckles is more appropriate than going with Tails, because I feel Tails is more of an emotional support, or someone that would be there for Sonic, while Knuckles, while not he's kind of the proto man to uh, Sonic's Mega Man, which is they're at times they're neither friend nor foe, but Knuckles is kind of the overlooking presence that could dictate certain situations. So we ultimately decided to have Knuckles to bookend it, to set up where the story could go, to give appropriate ending, and also to show that Sonic is not just the only one of his kind.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's like there are still analytic Mobians out there. It's just a matter of, you know, are they actually there?
Yeah. And it's implied that Robotnik did go on this kind of genocidal means of trying to eliminate all of them. So we were trying to kind of hint that each one is kind of even more unique because Robotnik is making an attempt to eliminate them. It's supposed to be implied that instead of eliminating all of them, he's kind of systematically roboticizing them, but that goes back to the whole spiel of the movie it was approached, and I realized this very late in the game, almost like the first act or the first half of the first act of a feature. So it's a lot of setup and a lot of introduction, and I didn't realize this until very late, which kind of is a good and a bad thing. It kind of sets you up for what a feature could be, but there's no definitive closure.
This is true. It's like you end if people end something and then they decide later, well, I want to do more on it. It's like how are you going to pick it up again if you left it so thoroughly closed like it is?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now I got another question for you. This is a question from myself.
Mm.
I noticed that I guess the depiction of Station Square, we see Station Square in the very beginning there, and then later we see this dystopian type version of Station Square. Is that meant to almost kind of depict Robotropolis in a way?
Absolutely. In fact, and this was something I was really wishing could read better in the final movie. Literally read better. I'm not being cute. It's the president, President Bush now. He's in front of a sign that essentially says, I think I'm pronouncing it wrong, like Mobotropolis, insinuating that's the capital of Mobius, or the big city in Mobius, and that turns into Robotropolis. So we were trying to kind of imply that city was an iteration of Robotropolis, but literally the president was standing right in front of the sign, so you couldn't get a good read of that. But yeah, I mean that was the idea there, and it also helps contribute to the kind of the scale in certain areas where you have a world where Station Square and all these other cities do exist.
Yeah. Um, how did the creative process go to try to decide, what gets blended together, what elements would be chosen, and so forth and so on? What sources, I mean, besides the games probably, did you use to put together, did y'all put the story together with?
I realized late in the game that I ended up taking kind of essentially my favorite elements of every Sonic mythos to construct the story. So uh, I have a what I did was is in my mind I took the first game and I essentially created a story in my head of how the events would be set up and how the events would carry out and what Sonic's ultimate goal would be. And if this was a feature, that would be told. It's interesting because then as we went along, starting with what was the goal of the first game and how can that translate to a movie, I realized that a lot of the rules that I was setting up kind of adhere to both, like Sonic, instead of just the first game, but Sonic Adventure and Sonic Sat AM. And I started realizing I was taking my favorite elements of each that kind of gelled for me as a Sonic fan. Like, what did I like best about Sat AM that worked? What did I like best about Adventures that worked? And I guess it's kind of like, 20 plus years of just collective fandom, just kind of going into a pot and then trying to make something out of that. Because at the end of the day, it is a fan film, so a lot of the decisions are from an artistic, creative standpoint, and then the rest are from a fan standpoint. Because I'm a fan. I mean, that's why I picked to do this in the first place.
And it's great that someone like you steps up to the plate to be able to do such a project like this, because Sonic fans have been around for so many years, and we really haven't got much of anything to show for as far as theatrical releases are concerned. I mean, we're still waiting on that. At least Mario had already gotten a theatrical release,
Uh,
no matter how bad it was.
yeah. I can. I mean, from the fan filmmaking end of things, uh, I can definitely understand why no one else has attempted to do this on my level. It's because it's exhausting. It's because It's funny because earlier you mentioned the other fan film by a gentleman named Richard Kuda, and it's in retrospect I can definitely understand why he had to step away because if you go into something trying to satisfy everyone, especially in a fan base like Sonic, it ain't gonna happen. So you'll just beat yourself up doing it. Uh, Dealing with some of the trolls of the community is never a fun thing, and at the end of the day, adhering to what you envision Sonic as, and then trying to make that work for everyone else is rather difficult. Um, which goes into the whole, I guess, the Hollywood level of things, which is it's very possible for Hollywood to try to do something on the theatrical level, but it just kind of makes me wonder, like, Mega Man has kind of, as I said, a path, and Mario kind of sort of has a path, but Sonic is so over the place in its various mythos and genres that I don't know where a Hollywood exec would start. I mean, I guess essentially you would just do what they did with the Japanese animation, just have Sonic foiling another Robotnik plan and just ending it there.
Yeah, it's very hard at this point. It's like when you got animation companies like Deke trying to make their own interpretation of the video game series, which back in the 90s,
Yeah.
um, there wasn't too much of a story plot to Sonic, so it was a matter of trying to interpret how to pull it off. And
Hmm.
then you got Japan trying to do their own version, which we got Sonic X for.
Yeah.
Uh, then we got Deke again decided they're going to do like three different versions of Sonic. I mean, we got Adventures of Sonic, Sonic the Satian series, and then we got Sonic Underground, which are just completely set up in different universes. So we got three more set up there. Then we got Archie Comics, who's doing their own version, and they're still going to this very day, thankfully. So Sonic fans still have something to work with. Which, it's funny you keep bringing up Mega Man since we got Archie doing the Sonic Mega Man crossover
Yeah.
this year. That's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And the interesting thing about I mean, you have all these various in terms of television shows actually, and video releases, all these various iterations of Sonic, and it makes me realize a lot of these are kind of embedded in the early history of Sonic. Like, it's very hard to try to tap into a new Sonic story now that might catch on, because I feel like when you start something much earlier on in the life of a franchise, when it's still going strong, uh, the fandom and the fandom is going to be a lot more accepting than right now. Sonic has been going through a rough 10 years, so right now change is a bad thing, which is kind of the polarizing thing about this movie. Is some people enjoy the change, but some have been fighting change for the last 10 years.
And I don't know what's going on with my chat because it seems like my chat has not been active for the last 15 minutes. You
Ooh.
got it. So I don't know whether live stream was just derping or okay. I got Charles next to me. He said he's handling questions now since my chat's not
Alright.
working. So hopefully we'll get some questions out here in the next few minutes.
Alright.
I have, well, maybe I don't. I thought I had another question sitting up here. Okay. Our next question is, what was the design choice behind Sonic's mouth and why it was designed the way it was? Because normally you see Sonic's mouth and you see it always off to one side, and now
Yeah.
we got Sonic's mouth it takes up his entire muzzle. So
Yeah. That was another kind of realistic decision that we made. Um, After a while, I was very much thinking about going back to that iteration, um, and we were kind of discussing the process, how to go about rigging it. But then we were so far along in the process that we had to kind of just stick with what we had. And I mean, that's the interesting thing about this fan film, which is at the end of the day, it is a fan film, and we're kind of using this as a means of gauging various things. So if this was to turn into something bigger, and we were able to do something with this, we would essentially take everything that we've heard, you know, negativity against on this film and kind of implement it. I already know that something would have to be done about the fur, the mouth. I would bring back to the way it was. Uh, I'm on the fence about the quills, and it's a weird like research and development thing because that's what this whole film is. It was from beginning to end, and still is after the fact. Is it's a big experiment, and it's much better to experiment on a fan film level. Because if I was doing this legitly, I wouldn't have the courage to want to experiment because then when it becomes official, it matters, and that's kind of in the history books. But for this is a fan film, so if you do something wrong, you just check it off and move on. But it's just a big experiment, a very fun, tiring, exciting one.
it's like almost a trial and error type deal. So you know what works for if you decide if you're going to do something else for next time.
Hmm. Yes.
Uh, there was a question I had up here. Uh, Hang on just a second here. I think I got another question popped up here. I got a question from Recorder Dude.
Yeah.
Uh, why are you attempting to make realistic decisions for a Sonic movie? If he was supposed to be realistic, he could have looked like an actual hedgehog.
Because then you're going into a territory as a fan I don't want to go, which is it's one thing to modify a character's design, and then it's another to completely alter and change it. And as a fan, I can't bring myself to do that. That's. I mean, it's not even. I can't even say if it's bad decision making because technically it's what you should do. But as a fan, I feel it's kind of that's a grave injustice. I mean, at the end of the day, like making a slight change to Mega Man or a slight change to this character or throwing fur on Sonic is it's going to create some frowns, but not as much as if you were to take the tried and true design and turn it upside down, make him taller, make him super skinny, make his head the actual head of a hedgehog. It's I'm a Sonic fan, and there's just certain things I can't bring myself to do. And as realistic as I want to make this movie, I can't bring myself to make him look. If I look at him and it doesn't look like Sonic, then it's not Sonic. So you can only go so far before you no longer have Sonic, and I can't bring myself to that level.
Yeah, I can understand. There's certain restraints you gotta put yourself into to make sure you keep from crossing a certain line there.
Yeah.
Oh, um, I guess I'm gonna go ahead and bring this up again because someone's asking me another question. All X360, yes, will you make a sequel?
Uh, if only it was official and fully CG. In terms of because the whole thing is it's supposed to be some sort. It's supposed to be a spec or a pitch film. Not necessarily showing 100% what we would do with the character, but essentially kind of showing an iteration and our resourcefulness and what can be done. Um, I would like to do a sequel, but it would have to be it would have to be official. It would have to be a part of the series that I want to do, and unfortunately, with the changes I would make to make it more faithful, it wouldn't necessarily be a sequel anymore. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to say exactly, but uh, in terms of doing fan films, this is essentially it for me because Mega Man was one thing, and then Sonic essentially kind of, as my girlfriend desperately wanted, because she wanted me to take a break from the fan films because they're a whole feat unto themselves. Sonic was exactly what I needed to kind of just put a cap on the end of my fan filmmaking career, so now I can stick to the original stuff. So I guess the simple answer is I don't think there will be a sequel. Not unless we can do an original Sonic series, but there won't be a sequel.
Uh, All X360 also asks, has Sega ever contacted you about this movie?
I remember in the past we talked to a rep very briefly, and essentially it's the whole spiel of if you don't make money on it, we don't care, and if we watch it, then awesome. Um, I mean, which is kind of satisfying mainly because if they're aware of it, even if they're not, completely aware of it, it's nice. If if essentially they're not giving us their blessing, but it almost feels like we're probably safe in releasing this, being that it's a fan piece and all. I feel in order to do what we want to do and actually pitch it legitimately to Sega, we need the right representation, we need the right package, we have to essentially make it official. Right now, it's not official until we get the agent and we get Jaleel behind this and we get everything in order and go to them and say this is what we want to do. So now that the movie's out, we'll see exactly if someone at Sega does watch it and see what they think.
Well, I know a couple of people at Sega. I could probably get them to see it. So
That would be great.
I'd direct the film their way and see what they think. So,
Cool.
um, Forever Sonic asks, did Sega have any influence in the story, or were you able to go in any direction you thought of?
Um, Being it's a fan film, and this is the one thing I'm probably going to enjoy now before, uh, and it's the the life of a filmmaker, which is there are situations in which you have to answer to producers and answer to others. Luckily, in my situation, the producers I work with, Dan and Dave Harwitz, are uh, we think similarly, and we are very in tune with each other, and we want the best out of each other. So there's never really too much conflict in terms of creative control there. So for this, it was essentially our desire as fans as to what we wanted to do, which we can enjoy now because I'm pretty sure if you were working within the confines of Sega, the rules would be much tighter, which could be good or bad depending on the fan you are. If you're the one to believe that Sega, cares about Sonic, or if you think Sega is trying to modernize him too much, or so I mean, it's hard to say right now until I actually officially work with them, but I'm pretty sure the rules would change once I got officially involved with them.
That's cool. Um, XL360 also asks, was there any voice actors that you wanted to voice Sonic other than Jaleel White? Or did you have anybody else in mind if Jaleel White was not going to sign on, so forth and so on?
Um, it was interesting because I had ideas, but I wasn't thinking past. I couldn't think past Jaleel, mainly because I felt like at the end of the day, if I'm making this grand fan film, I need kind of the ultimate hook and reason to do it, and I feel Julia was that. I didn't want to make a fan film that was just like any other fan film, so I essentially made any possible decision to kind of separate it from everything else. And I felt the ultimate decision to make is to try to get the guy that everyone else attempted to get. And I didn't know if he was going to say yes, and he did. But in the event he didn't say yes, there was slight consideration I'd probably go with another known actor, but then again, a lot of the voice actors that work with Sonic, I think, are on strict contracts and non-competes and are part of unions that would never allow them to do a unofficial Sonic movie. Jaleel's not part of any of that. Uh, so I was considering very early on, if Jaleel wasn't to say no, I'd go someone with like, Aaron Henson, Ego Raptor to do Sonic, or someone, kind of an internet celeb that would be known for being a voice actor. So, and someone that's a talented voice actor. I was going to be going in that direction.
That's awesome. Yeah, uh, that was something. It's like it's like what would happen if you didn't get Jaleel? So that's interesting to know. Um, Rage and Ronick asks, will you be making the rounds at some more conventions this year about the fan film?
I feel like a big part of this is interacting with, because a lot of people are going to like this movie and a lot of people are going to hate it, but at the end of the day, they're hating the movie, and it's only going to be few and far between where they're going to hate the people who made the movie, because at the end of the day, this fan base is very weird and conflicted, but
Yeah, I
uh,
know.
it's a fan movie, and even if you don't like it, and if you do, and whatever, I kind of like interacting with other fans, and I like hearing from them what they would do and what they think, and what I did that was cool, what I did that wasn't cool, because I'm not on a level above anyone else. I'm kind of in there with everyone else. The only difference is I had a camera and I shot a movie, and that's really the big difference between me and other fans. So I would like to do convention tours because I want to interact with other fans who may have or may not enjoyed the movie. I would like to. I know that someone from like Summer of Sonic was interested in showing the movie. I want to do a brief convention tour this year at Sonic conventions or any conventions that would allow it. I did it for Mega Man, and that was really, really fun, so I would love to do it for Sonic.
I know Sonic Boom is might be coming back this year. We don't know
Oh,
yet.
yes.
I've been to the first two Sonic Booms, so I'm trying to get in touch with Sega about this year's Sonic Boom. So we'll see what's going on there.
Oh,
Um,
to
in the meanwhile, a follow up to your to the previous question about voice actor choices. Zero Wing wants to know why Ego Raptor. Ego Raptor is the biggest Sonic fan. And he never really seriously voiced well. Voiced him.
that's the thing. You a Raptor is one of those voice actors that the way he voices his videos is to kind of serve a comedic element. As a director, I know that someone like him it can be a good voice actor that performs fairly well. Um, and also, there's kind of the quote unquote marketability to him because he's well known. He's a pretty chill guy, and he's very adaptable to most roles he does. It's just in a lot of his videos, he tailors to what the video requires of him. So, you see all these ranges of performances, and I feel that that's kind of beneficial. And that's the thing. That's something I would have discussed with my producers, and I would discuss with all the other people involved in the movie, because I could say that I want him, but there's no guarantee he is the best decision, which is, I'm glad that we ended up going the route of Jaleel, because if we didn't get Jaleel was, unanimously the guy we wanted. And after that, it was going to be a discussion like, oh, I have, Aaron on my list, but here's a bunch of others, and we would have spent weeks discussing alternatives. In addition to just internet voice actors, actual voice actors, and just kind of playing around and looking through a pool to see who we can find. So, I mean, Aaron is just off the top of my head because he's in the movie, or voices in the movie. So, I don't know if there was a real big guarantee he would have been my go-to guy after Jaleel, but off the top of my head, I know he was on my list of people that I was considering.
Okay. Um, AllX360 asks, did you ever think of adding other Sonic characters other than Sonic and Knuckles?
If, in all honesty, you would have seen so many characters if I had the budget and the resources. It's like every time a decision was made and added, it would literally tack on weeks of work. So the short little film that was supposed to take such and such time ended up taking longer because we wanted to throw in this egg carrier. It ended up taking longer because we wanted to throw in this spot. I know that my producer Dave wanted to throw in a bunch more bots from the first, from Green Hill Zone, and he's like, oh well, the crab will run over here and he'll snip and we'll have a fish jump up in there. It's just literally he said the whole pitch within 15 seconds, and every 2 seconds he was essentially adding 5 months of work to the film, and
Oh my god.
it's so frustrating because you want Motobug and you want Buzz Bomber, but each time you say that, it tacks on time. So I mean,
It's like you gotta draw a line somewhere.
yeah, and the robots are much easier to deal with because they're mechanical, and they're restricted by the components of their construction. Knuckles and Tails and everyone else are meant to be animals, so you're no longer restricted. That's also another reason why it took just as much time to do this than it did Mega Man, which was 90 minutes, but Mega Man was all robots, and robots are restricted by the means of their construction. So animating them is, kind of easier. It's easier to kind of plan out the robots and how they're going to interact, and side animation flaws with a robot are much more forgivable than something that's meant to move organically. So throwing more stuff from Tails, from Knuckles, it was just, I'd be working on this film for another 3 years.
Yeah. It's such a long time. I mean, like I said before, it took 2.5 years just to do 20 minutes of film.
Yeah.
So that's a long time. Um, Now I got a question, and some other people have been asking this question too. How did you manage to get people like Doug Walker, James Rolfe, Brental Floss, and all of them into the film?
Goes back to Mega Man. Mega Man was kind of the film that kind of got me on the radar of a lot of these people because Screw Attack put up Mega Man 2 years ago, and at the time, Screw Attack was, known for, bringing James into the light. James brought himself into the light, and Screw Attack pushed him a step, and then another site pushed him a step. Through Screw Attack, James Rolfe became aware of me, Brent became aware of me, and through them, since they work often with Doug Walker became aware of me, and it's just kind of the chain reaction of things where if you're like a certain type of internet celeb, you know each other, so once one knows about you and you've impressed them enough in regards to something like Mega Man, then they all know about you. And I guess there's something appealing to pitching my Sonic idea to them because it's hugely ambitious, and a lot of these guys are attracted to hugely ambitious things.
I'll tell you, I was really thrilled to see Doug Walker on film there. I'm a big fan of his, so it was great to see him in action as the gun soldier there. It's like I saw him, I recognized him, I was like, oh, hi Doug. Recorded Dude asked, why did you squeeze all the celebrity cameos in the first few minutes instead of dispersing them throughout the film? It seemed really forced.
That was kind of accidental, but also it's kind of the mentality to just kind of get them out of the way so that a certain part of the movie could be focused on Robotnik, a certain part of the movie can be focused on Sonic, and narratively, I mean, if you're familiar with these guys, it creates a fun little hook in the beginning of the movie, and it was also unintentional. I didn't realize until later on that I packed all the cameos so early on. It was just when I was writing the script, it seemed like, not to say they're throwaway parts, but the parts that could be used for a cameo were much earlier in the movie, since everything else later on was more less switchable. Like, I wasn't in a position where I think I could switch out the gun soldiers that Sonic would save. I didn't think I was in a position that have another cameo while Sonic is doing what he's doing in the second half of the movie. So it almost seems like subconsciously I was trying to not get them out of the way, but get to their moments first, so I had the rest of the movie to focus on more heavy-duty moments. Kind of like, I guess, the Hitchcock theory, which Hitchcock would always cameo within the first 2 minutes of the movie, so no one was looking for him throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, that was almost my thought exactly. It's like if you advertise that these people are going to be seeing the movie, that people are probably going to spend the entire movie focused on trying to look for them instead of trying to focus on the story. So I could see where that comes up at.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I certainly didn't want to spend the entire film looking for Doug, which fortunately I wasn't even trying to look for Doug. I just kind of remember at the last one, oh wait, he's in this, and that's what popped up. So Alex360 asks, were there any deleted scenes?
I would say, of this movie, I would say at least a minute and a half was cut, but, and I was so hesitant to cut all this stuff out, but it was literally another few months of work. It was more action stuff. And that's the thing, the main reason we gave ourselves a deadline, even if we fell behind because of stupid circumstances, is if you publicly, and this is just me, like other fan filmmakers or other individuals or other people who attempt this, it kind of depends on the situation, but for me, if I'm going to publicly announce a release date, then I'm putting the pressure on myself, and I'm putting, a bunch of eyes on me to get a movie done by a specific time. Because in all honesty, this movie, I could have worked on this for another year, making tweaks, adding more, but then I'll get to a point at the end of that year where I'm going to be making tweaks and adding more, and making tweaks and adding more. And I'm watching the cut today, and I still wish there was more stuff I can add to clarify some of the narrative stuff I wanted to do, but there comes a time where you just kind of have to cut it. I really want the movie to be like 30 to 35 minutes long. But then I feel like it gets to a point where then it becomes filler. And that's when we ended up cutting a lot. It was a lot more of the action stuff, which it gets to a point where you get you, when structuring an action sequence, uh, you get the kind of not the gimmick. I'll use the word gimmick of an action beat. Like you get what the Motobug is all about. That scene's done. Move on. You get what the Buzz Bomber is all about. That scene's done. Move on. Let's up the ante. Let's up the ante. Let's up the ante. And originally the Buzz Bomber scene was 30 seconds longer. The Motobug scene was 30 seconds longer, and various other scene action beats were a little bit longer. But then after a while, it gets redundant, and the pacing. And we're already pushing the pacing of the film as is, so we can try to hit 20 minutes. But it was more of a pacing thing. It wasn't really necessarily anything narrative. Although in retrospect, I wish I could have added a little bit more. And I would have loved a face-to-face confrontation between Robotnik and Sonic.
Yeah, that would have been awesome, but I'm sure that would add another year of work just to do that.
Oh goodness, yes.
A few people have asked us, wasn't the film originally supposed to be like 25 minutes long? And some people even heard the rumor it was double the length of what it was originally supposed to be. I don't know where people were picking that one up from, but
I definitely know where that rumor came from. I read comics a lot, and a lot of the fans kind of create it. A lot of fans are under the assumption that, oh, it took this long, that means the movie is going to be longer. It's as simple as that. A lot of fans assume that the movie, since it took twice as long than intended, we want it to be done in a, like, 18 months max, 16 months. And then at that point, we were announcing it was going to be from 10 to 20 minutes, and as soon as it became past that or double that, people started assuming, oh, and now it's going to be twice as long. There was a time in which I said we might be pushing the 25-minute mark. I tried to avoid making that affirmative, mainly because I didn't want to get anyone's hopes up, but there were slight discussions that we were going to be at 25 minutes, but usually it came after people started bringing it up, like, oh, it's been so long, so I guess the movie's longer. We're like, we want to have a longer movie, but at the same time, we're trying to find the balance between having a long movie and getting it done before, 2015. So it was a little bit of a kind of a fan-created thing and a little bit of me wanting it to be longer, and I've said this on many occasions. I wish it was longer, but it's unfortunate because the longer it is, the longer it's going to take to make.
yeah. DJ Ear asks, why such a lack of attention to detail, as in Knuckles with his gloves, dirt kick up, etc.? I'm not quite sure where he's getting at, but
We tried to get the balance between all that, but at the end of the day, it was just kind of a resource. Those types of little detail thing that Weta and ILM do very, very well is because they got the people. They have a department. They have a person dedicated to particle effects. So when that character walks across the ground, they kick up the dirt. I wish the spec could have been done with a visual effects company, but that wasn't in the cards. And at the end of the day, we're kind of victims of the resources we have. So we work with what resources we have, and Knuckles, since that was the last decision, we spent so much more time getting Sonic figured out and getting him made that it almost seemed counterproductive for that one shot in the end to really get too detail-oriented with Knuckles. If this was a full-blown show, then we would have the people and the resources to be very specific about these details, but, and you're going to hear me say this a lot, it's just kind of, we're victims of our resources, like most fans. That's basically it. You can only do so much with what you have until, you're working with something you don't have, so...
okay. Kuto asks, have you ever thought about making some of the robots stop-motion models or puppets?
Yeah. I love the old school effects, and I love just kind of the tactile, hands-on approach to all those types of things. And I think kidding around and it got serious for a bit was doing some of this stuff in some way, puppetry, stop motion. Uh, and then at the end of the day, it's just that becomes another resource thing, which is as long as it took us to do this, CG was just quicker. Doing the puppets would have cost a little bit more. It would have taken time to construct them. We would have to handle them. More takes, more footage, more time, especially stop motion. So, I mean,
Oh yeah.
that's filmmaking. It's a weird balance of just time management and doing what's right for the film. So, if it was a big studio deal, then I would have loved to try to integrate more puppets into this, especially since the Robotnik set was originally going to be CG, but my producers convinced me that uh, let's just put the extra funds into building this because it's just going to serve the film a lot better than us taking the CG route when we don't have to, which for certain things you have to, and for certain things you try not to. I don't like CG, and that's coming from the guy who did this movie, so...
Yeah, it just seems so hard trying to work with CG there, and I've tried working with CG programs myself before. I was like, I'll stick to my artwork, thank you.
It's
um,
so good.
yeah. Um, Zero Wing asks, why were all the E series robots gamma? Would have been nice to see more colored robots.
It was mainly for uniformity. Because in the film they're essentially foot soldiers, and we wanted to adhere to that notion that they're all uniform in appearance and uniform in what they can do. We were considering adding variation to the robots, like the ones on the ships have gun hands when maybe that shouldn't make sense. They should have two hands, so we were going to create various alternative models, but then it goes back to the whole time and resource constraints, so it's weird. It's like picking your battle as you go along. I would have loved to see more variety in the E series, but we just stuck with the uniformity.
In the end, it was just easier to be able to have several models of the same model, whether
Yeah.
rather than trying to create each individual robot,
Yes.
which I understand. So, um, recorder dude asks, um, was noting that Eggman got the third emerald in any way to a reference to the well-known "Where's that fourth damn Chaos Emerald"? Where's that damn? I'm sorry, I screwed that up. Where's that damn fourth Chaos Emerald? Shadow's my favorite character, and I still screwed up his line.
Oh my goodness. It wasn't initially, but I find that it's very interesting subconsciously. um, I guess it was subconscious just because I was trying to structure the story in terms of kind of how the emeralds fit into it, and I guess that peeked its way into there. I wasn't thinking about it.
The in jokes when you don't even intend it to be an in joke.
Those are the best in jokes.
Um, all X360 asks, why was Green Hill Zone the only location from the Sonic games?
We wanted to do a lot more. Resources, time. I I was ready to do a bunch of stages and kind of have my fun with them, but you know, um, and also it serves the kind of narrative arc, which is setting up the events of the first game and how they're going to fit into our whole live action, quote unquote live action story. And I feel out of all the stages to represent in the movie, you kind of have to represent the more iconic one and the ultimate Sonic stage. And when you think of Sonic, you think of the Green Hill Zone. So that was kind of the decision to go with, was Green Hill Zone, and everything else kind of ended up becoming filler. And if it was a feature, I would have done all the stages, and each would have served a narrative arc, like I did in the Mega Man fan film. I had Mega Man go through all, the trials and tribulations of each bot, and in kind of a stage format. I would do the same with a Sonic film, which is he goes through each of these in a stage format. So I would have loved to do more, but Green Hill Zone was already, I guess, a model that took 7 months to do.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I understand that. So, yeah, it's like all the time, all the resources. So, it
Yeah.
just comes right back down to that. So, um, Raging Ronic asks, why could the Satian Robotnik not be used instead?
Why could he not be used?
What? Yeah, I guess that's what they're asking. The question seemed to be phrased a little wrong. So,
Okay. Um, it's weird because at the end of the day, I'm more of a game fan than anybody, so I'm trying to find the best representation of just kind of the two Ultimate Robotnik iterations, which is the very first game and Sad AM. Sad AM was the one to give him kind of more personality and more of a definitive characterization. And the first game was, the first Robotnik. It was the Robotnik that set up his design and is kind of embedded in our heads as to who Robotnik looks like. So between the two, I tried to find a happy medium because you had one who had the design and the other that had the characteristic. And the Sad AM had a great character design, but as a fan, I wanted to see more of an iteration towards the first game since that's what I grew up on primarily.
yeah. I grew up with the games too, and I find myself, I really like the modern version of Eggman Robotnik. Um, I liked his design, and I guess it also helps that he has a great voice actor behind him with Mike Pollock
Mm-hmm.
being the guy who voices. Like every time I hear Robotnik, all I can hear is Mike Pollock, and it's loud. So,
Oh, goodness.
do we have any more questions? Okay, we're working on more questions right now, so
Excellent.
just give us a few minutes here. Um, Kudo asked, do you plan on trying to pitch this to any studio now that you have your resources to back you up?
That's the goal with this. I want my thinking going into this is love or hate the fan film. I want to go faithful, and I want to do something stronger with a series or a movie, and it stems from the fact that we haven't had a really solid Sonic show for 20 years. Um, Sonic X appealed to the very young demographic, uh, and it wasn't, the best of shows. I can understand the purpose of the series, but it just wasn't what the franchise needed. The two Japanese animations were just kind of standalone. Underground is what it is, and you have Sad AM, which is kind of the show. Most people, when they think of the television show, they usually think of that, and it's a shame that it's kind of been 20 years since we've seen a really good representation of Sonic in a mobile medium, which is either animation or film, and it's kind of timely now that Sonic can kind of get that surge in popularity again, since unfortunately it is dwindling a little bit. Because you have someone like Mario, who is what I call an active icon, which is essentially an icon that's still going strong, and you have these various other current active icons. And while Sonic is an icon, I don't know if he's as active as he was long ago, and people more see him as what he was rather than what he could be. And I really want to see him come, what he was again. I want to see, Sonic become this grand popular video game character again that everyone can be talking about and everyone can be enjoying. Because there was no time like when in the mid '90s when you were a Sonic fan and he was as cool as we know him to be. The only difference is we want the mainstream and everyone else to know him to be as cool as we know him to be. So that's the primary goal with this, is to kind of bring that back.
Well, I'd say I hope that happens because we definitely need see Sonic make a comeback in this, and it's like you said, we had Sonic X was our very last show to show up, and it's been off the air for a while now. um, and like I said, it just seemed to appeal to more of the younger kids, and I think that's sort of on the fault of for kids in the English translation, but you
Yeah.
know that even the Japanese one was kind of silly to a point. Um,
Mm.
oh, DJ Ears asked, what was with the audio? There were some out of place sound effects, and some of the recorded lines of dialogue are just way out of place volume wise. And I think an example was the spin dash sound that we heard like halfway through. It just sounded so out of place.
I think it's I that was a creative choice on the sound designer's level, and I enjoyed it, and the spin dash noise is a very, cute nod. I can definitely understand some of the grievances with the sound mix, because uh, if it goes back to the whole, if I wish I had more time, I wish I had more time, but then it gets to a point where you kind of have to cut it off. That's why there's a very big likely chance that down the line I'm going to be doing a director's cut release of the movie, which is essentially a more lean, polished version. But this is going to be at a point where I have more resources to do a stronger sonic render, to do a stronger audio mix, do a stronger this. Because right now we're still working within the confines of our resources, so I'm hoping down the line I can bring this up to another level, but at that point I might be in a position where I'm already doing something on the level that I wanted to all along, so yeah. uh, I can definitely understand the sound mix needed a little more tweaking, but uh, it was kind of the school of thought where it was just cutoff time came. All I was doing was tweaking, and then we had to, finally release it. I like the spin dash noise. That's just my personal opinion.
Okay. Um, I have a question, and I think someone else had asked this question, but I can't remember who now. So forgive me if you're listening out there, people, if I forget who you are. Um, we were both wondering if you could make changes to the film. If there was anything that you think that need to be changed now that you've seen it released, what kind of changes would you make now?
So many. Um, I would, I would ultimately do. Hello. Sorry, I had a bit of an audio issue there.
Oh, no problem. I thought my line had died or something.
No, 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 no. It's a minor issue.
Okay.
Um, okay, I was just resolving that. All right. I would love to take another pass at the audio mix again and redesign, because here's the thing: when it comes to audio design, if you have the resources, you can create new sounds, and I would love to create new sounds for Sonic. Um, we would need a bigger studio and a facility for that. The CG render, I really, really would have loved to do a more high quality render on Sonic, but Sonic was so render heavy that when shopping him out to a render farm, Sonic would just eat up money like nobody's business. So with a budget, I'd be able to do a better Sonic render. I'd be able to refinesse the mouth. For the sake of the film, I would keep the fur. I would keep the quills. I would do something about the mouth. Refinesse some of the animations of Sonic. Do some of what I had intended initially for the action sequences. Utilizing Sonic speed a lot more. It's the, I can be here all day saying what I would change, because at the end of the day, for a movie like this, there's a difference between settling and compromise. Settling is just saying, I give up, this is what I have to give, and I'm done here, I don't want to do anymore. And compromise is essentially making a compromise and making a decision to best utilize your time and resources because otherwise you'll be running in circles. The movie, we made compromises because we wanted to stay within our own reasonable boundaries and our own reasonable resources. So at the end of the day, if I had more resources, I would do a lot more. So it's weird because you can give Spielberg 100 million, and I'm pretty sure if you gave him 200 million, he'd do more. If you gave him 300 million, he'd do more. So it's just kind of this endless cycle. So it's the same situation for Mega Man. I wish I could do more, but you always in this fan film, do it yourself type of way. It's you're a victim of the resources.
Yep. Oh, All X360 asks, why were there no Sonic songs in the soundtrack? And I have to say for a moment, I did pick up a hint of Green Hill Zone music when Green Hill Zone picked up. I could hear that faintly within the soundtrack that was
Yes.
created, but other than that, I think the main question was why was there no recognizable Sonic songs in the movie?
Um, there's many answers to that. First and foremost, it's because if you go back to my Mega Man fan film, when you watch the Mega Man fan film, uh, there are musical cues there that kind of are incorporated from the game, but they're appropriate. You hear Wily's castles. You hear the Wily Castle theme when we're at Wily's Castle. Um, we have a little bit of some kind of very early Robotnik anthems used as his kind of underscore. Um, but it's hard because for the sake of the short, since it's more of a prequel and a setup, it's very hard to integrate music because as much as I love the Chemical Plant Zone theme, if I integrate it into this movie, it makes no, musical or narrative sense since the fan is going to know where that came from and he's going to know that it shouldn't belong. So it's hard because you try to find stuff that belongs, and also, like for example, Sonic's main theme, I would have loved to incorporate that, but I almost feel like that is something I would have incorporated much later in the movie as Sonic is becoming more of a hero and he's becoming, more of a, you know, icon within the world as this, as this hero. So it's just kind of the situation dictates the musical score. So when we see Green Hill Zone, we hear a bit of the Green Hill Zone theme because it's appropriate. So and also with any Sonic game that comes before, a Sonic game will always try to create its own sound and its own series of themes, like the Genesis age into the Dreamcast age and so on. So that's what we were trying to do with the movie. You do what's appropriate to the medium and what's appropriate to the situation.
Okay, yeah, that sounds about right. The Chaos Blue asks, to get this to be a feature length film, what doesn't Sega need to get involved with this in some fashion?
That's why the feature wouldn't happen without them. Um, the whole goal is we want to take this pitch to Sega, or at least be in a position where we can show what we can do, what our resources are, what we need of them, and what we could potentially get from other studios. Um, and I mean, we know people that could help acquire what we need financially to make a feature film happen. But one of the important things is Sega. Um, at the end of the day, Sega wants to make a profit on Sonic, so we have to do something about the movie rights. We'd have to get them involved and a studio involved, and it's just the red tape, it's the whole, hierarchy, it's the whole journey of working in the film industry. We would have to go through those channels in order for the feature to happen. The feature and the series, it's essentially after this, it's a matter of dealing with Sega. And I'm a pessimist when I need to be, and an optimist when I need to be, but this is not the type of thing Sega's going to jump on. So
we have backup plans. We have other projects. We have various other routes to go through, but Sega is kind of a necessity if we want to move forward.
Oh. Kudo asks, when do you plan on pitching the film to the studio of your choice?
We want to wait a few weeks because we feel that the viewership thing, the numbers and views might help in our argument. Because at the end of the day, a studio and Sega and all that, I mean, 50% of the policy is always trying to, make your demographic happy, and then the other half is making them happy enough so they'll give you money. So we have to try to make our presentation as fiscally sound as possible so that way they see that there's a potential in this. So we want to give time so we can prepare a business plan, to prepare a solid pitch involving this movie. We're probably actually going to touch up the movie a bit before we show it to the studio. We're probably even going to make a condensed 5-minute version for the sake of being able to show them quick, since that is the goal of a pitch meeting, is they want everything to the point. And essentially, after a little bit of restructuring and getting the right people behind us to go into these meetings, we'll do it. So I don't see this happening for at least, I would like to say 4 weeks, but I don't think that's going to happen. So it's going to be at least a few months, realistically.
I wish all the best to you on that, cuz. So we got our fingers crossed. So.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. The Chaos Blue asks, if this feature film Dream is going to be based on the SatAM canon, why that canon?
That's an interesting thing. I mean, it's based on many types of canon. It's just, I realize the film kind of shows off more of the SatAM canon than intended, while the feature would be more of the first game canon combined with the adventure canon. Because the purpose of this film was like setting up characters, setting up an environment, and setting up specific rules, and then the rest of the feature would be the journey and the plot and the arc and the character arc. The unintended SatAM canon is mainly because at the end of the day, of all the narratives, it's probably the strongest narrative that has been creative in terms of Sonic. The narrative of the first game is Sonic runs from point A to point B and saves animals and defeats Robotnik. So if you need a canon to be able to fall back on when the narrative is not strong based on the source material, then SatAM is the way to go. Granted, I don't want to rely on that completely, but it's definitely a good foundation when the going gets tough.
Trying to answer somebody's question here real quick. We already had a question answered earlier, and someone was asking again. Someone was asking if you were using Maya for 3D animation. So I know the answer was already answered yes. So I'm going to get that out of the way right now. So for people who missed that one,
Mm-hmm.
Raging Ronick asks, do you think that Sonic is more naturally charismatic with Jaleel White voicing him?
That's interesting because that's why we wanted to go with Jaleel, because the thing about Sonic is he's the type of personality that I refer to him as the animal Tony Stark, which is when he enters a situation in a room or an environment, he is the center of attention, not because he tries to get it, but just because he is. He has the charisma to own a room. He's got the charisma to own a situation, and the cockiness of Sonic lends itself to that. It's relevant in any of the stronger games like Colors or Generation. Sonic is a charismatic character, and with Mega Man, I had to essentially build up a character over the course of a movie. With Sonic, he's the type of character within a few interactions, you get him, you get what he's all about, and his charisma is just so strong, you kind of want to join him on the journey. So out of all the voice actors, to me, I just feel like Jaleel was the best representation of the charisma that I think Sonic would need in order to be able to carry a movie. That's just me.
All right. And he carries it real well. I do say that. It's like the interaction between him and the female gun soldier, that was... I was just almost laughing at that point because it was like, okay. And it's almost funny because I think the last time that we had a human Sonic interaction was '06. So
Yep.
so yeah, I think some people were kind of reminded almost unfortunately about that part. So
Oh, it was intended.
it was
So,
it was intended.
oh, of course, it was my shot at '06. I mean, when you watch the scene, they both don't want to be together. That's why he pokes fun at her and she's disgusted. It's essentially me saying that them together is not okay. So, Sonic knows this, and that sets the rules for the future, which is we're not going to have none of that crap.
Awesome. And I think there will be a lot of happy people about that one. So, the Wax asks, wow, tongue twister. How many programs were used in total to make the film?
Oh goodness. Mudbox, Maya, After Effects, not including all of the plugins. Pretty sure we had additional ones, but off the top of my head, I know our three. Oh, Final Cut for editing, Red Cine for first color correction pass, Apple Color for color correction pass, up to 6 programs. Photoshop for various composites. Right off the top of my head, thus far, that's about 7 programs.
There's just so much software involved with trying to make this.
Goodness, yes.
The only programs I know of to use really is After Effects. That's the only thing I know how to use so far. I'm still learning on that one though. So. That one's already been answered. Long Crier Cat asked earlier why Knuckles and not Tails. That was already answered. Because Tails was more of a supporting character and just the way it was set up. So, do we have any more questions? We got time for a couple more questions. We got about 5 minutes left for our show.
Questions.
Oh, that's right. I didn't get. Did you delete that?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Was this the original direction you intended for the film?
No. Initially, the first draft was super embedded in SatAM rather than slight influence. There were no gun soldiers. They were all freedom fighters. The film was much darker and grittier. It was like Chris Nolan's Sonic, and after a while, I feel like you can make Sonic serious to a certain point, and you also have to integrate it with a little bit of levity. And the action stuff in the fan film are over the top because that's essentially it adheres to kind of the rules of Sonic, which is an over the top action sequence is law. It's it's all right because that's the law that the Sonic mythos has laid out. You can have your serious moments, but they can't be so demanding or over. They can't encompass and engulf your whole movie. The first draft was much darker. There were human freedom fighters. It was none of the freedom fighters that we know of. There was no Sally, etc., etc. It was just the gun soldiers as freedom fighters, and actually, I think I sent to you a test reel, and the very first 3 shots of that test reel were from the very first shoot we did when we had the original script, and then we changed it because I just couldn't accept a movie that would be that dark.
Yeah, I remember watching that, and it feels it even now it did feel like that the gun soldiers were kind of serving as uh, freedom fighters in a way because they're trying to work on trying to stop Robotnik and trying
Yeah.
to uh, do what they can to save people, especially at that point in time where it's like, um,
Yeah, definitely. It. I know it wasn't, Sally and company, but I feel if I went the human freedom fighter route, just the freedom fighters as a whole, as an entity, is a very touchy subject because there's lots of love for them, specifically Sally. So as long as if you touch, the freedom fighter mythos, people might get finicky. And if I'm aware of that, then I can't continue working in that mindset, so I had to get rid of the freedom fighters. And it feels like the gun was more of a logical choice within this type of world.
yeah, it definitely fits a lot better if you consider using human characters. It's like you might as well just use gun instead of freedom fighters because otherwise people are going like, well, the freedom fighters are supposed to be Mobians and they're
Yeah.
not Mobians, they're humans, and they would just I just see a whole new fuss pick up about that.
Oh,
This
exactly.
and like I said, this community seems to pick up on almost every little detail and just complain about it because otherwise we wouldn't have people screaming about green eyes.
Yeah. That's. I realized the process of making a Sonic fan, not even fan film, a fan fiction, is what can you do to fuss as least people as possible. That's what I learned.
Yeah. I think we got one last question before we end the show here.
All right.
Actually, the question kind of touches on the last part. Is what major development wanted you to go this route? What made you change from the original route you wanted to
Okay.
go?
What major development wanted you to change from this route? What changed your mind to go down this current route?
Uh, from like the original route.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, the short answer is to deter the fussers. But also, I can try to make other fans happy, but if I'm starting to get a sense that something isn't working for me as a fan, then how is it going to work for everyone else? And I enjoy Sad AM, and I know that once you step into a certain, realm or step into certain areas where the rules are going to change, as a fan, I react to that. So I initially thought something like the Freedom Fighter idea would be very interesting, but then as a fan, you're like, I mean, I'm okay with this, but I can understand why others wouldn't be. Like with the fur thing, I mean, the fur thing, I can understand why people wouldn't be okay with it, but that seems a little more insignificant to be angry about than certain other things. Like, I guess the king of that is like the green eyes thing. It's just, as a fan, do I understand why people are would be angry about the eye color situation? Sure, but I don't agree with it, and I can't, necessarily I can understand it, yet I can't. However, certain decisions like making human freedom fighters, the fan in me can understand to a point that I think this will hurt the movie. So I guess it's like the fan in you kind of says various things that cause you to act because, I mean, in Hollywood, you have someone like Michael Bay who works primarily as a director and not as a fan of what he is doing, and it shows.
Yeah.
And then there are times in which you're a fan of something, but then you let your fandom get the best of you, and it kind of over encapsulates and hurts your movie because you're not thinking in terms of filmmaking sense. And at the end of the day, you have to be in the middle where you understand the medium you're doing, yet you're a fan of what you're doing. And I try to be that. I don't know if I am. And if I'm not, I wish there was more people like that could be in the middle and do that type of thing. I mean, for comic books and for novels, there seems to be that, but for video games, it's so much more. Video game films are just so sensitive and it's just it's. I'm curious as to why it does. It's not. I'm still researching to this day how it's not done right yet. Like, what are the missing elements that cause this to not work? Because in certain situations, you can follow the source material to the point where every detail is encompassed, but sometimes they just don't get it right. It's the whole theory of adaptation fascinates me, and I guess that's why I've done these two fan films, and that's why I hope to do them officially.
All right. Um, Eddie. Thank you so much for your insight into the whole industry of and the process of how you got this film from point A to point B to point C all the way to point Z. So I know there's like so many steps involved with trying to do this, and
Mhm.
your work is very well done, in my personal opinion. I'm sure.
Thank you.
Yes, and I really wish you luck in pursuing your goals further, and we hope to see more as the Sonic community is concerned. I hope we get to see more to come. So, again, good luck, and thank you so much for joining with us today.
And thank you for having me. This was fun. I like doing this.
All right, all right.